Yes, hello everybody. Finna break down Daniel 70 weeks. Oh, let's see if I can tag some people first. Sorry, I didn't get that phone on. Let me see if I can tag some people. Oh, I can do it right there. Let me just tag some people real fast. Sorry, y'all, I'm late. A lot of things just occurred this fast, and on top of that, Mr. Bell, he has some things going on at the last minute, so he can't make it. So you're stuck with me tonight. So now let me just tag a few people that I believe wanted to hear this. And Mr. Bell, you can get it later on. Sorry, y'all. No. That's enough people for tagging right now. So now, what I want to go through, I'm not going to do any screen sharing tonight. I'm just going to be talking out the Bible, and had a long day of work, so you're just going to have to take my word for it. Or you can open up your Bibles yourself and see. I'm going to be talking about this book. I'll be talking about the Apocrypha. I have my Discipleship Study Bible, my regular KJV, my Josephus, and my Septuagint. So these are the things that I'm going to be talking out of tonight, dealing with Daniel's 70 weeks. So I know y'all saying I could have been prepared, but I just had to leave the house and step in, and it was on some of the time that I was going to use to prepare. But it's not too hard of a subject, I don't think. Well, if I need to come to Joseph, because I will, I'm not going to look for it. No more. Okay, so now let's start, and I'm going to read out the Septuagint because a lot of the disciples, well, all of the disciples, everybody in the first century actually quoted out of the Septuagint. So I want to use the Septuagint in order to build the case. So in order to Daniel chapter 9, we got to go into Daniel chapter 8. So now, this understanding that I have right now is actually new to me, and people have been debating it, especially the Torah only people. But my wife bought me a discipleship study Bible, and within this discipleship study Bible, within this Bible, it actually broke down Daniel's 70 weeks using a different method what I was used to. So I went through it, and it kind of made sense. So we're going to go through it now. So Daniel chapter 8. So it's going to read a little different because I'm reading out of the Septuagint. And it says, recap, Daniel chapter 7, he saw 4 beasts. So now, this is Daniel chapter 8 dealing with that. So now, in the 3rd year of the reign, King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, even to me, Daniel, after that which appeared to me at the first. And I was in Susa, the palace, which is in the land of Elam, and I was on the bank of Ubal. And I lifted up mine eyes and saw, and behold, a ram standing in front of the Ubal. And he had high horns, and one was higher than the other. And the high one came up last. So now, you see a ram, right? Ram has horns. One horn is bigger than the other. The highest one came up last. So, and I saw the ram budding westward, northward and southward, and no beast could stand before him, and there was none that could deliver out of his hand. And he did according to his will, and he became great. And I was considering, and behold, a he-goat came from the southwest on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the face of the whole earth. And the goat had a horn between his eyes. So now, this is what we have right here. We have a goat. And the goat has came and it has arrived on earth also. And it said, when it said the goat did not touch the earth, that shows you how swift, how fast the goat was. It was so fast that it did not appear to touch the earth. So now you have a ram and a goat, and this is what happened. And he came to the ram that had the horns, which I had seen standing in front of the ewe-ball, and he ran at him with the violence of his strength. And I saw him coming up close to the ram, and he was furiously enraged against him. And he smote the ram and broke both his horns, and there was no strength in the ram to stand before him. But he cast him on the ground and trampled on him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. So the goat destroys the ram's horn, and then it's defeating the ram. And the he-goat grew exceedingly great, and he was strong, and his great horn was broken, and 4 other horns rose up in its place towards the 4 winds of the heaven. So once you go back to Daniel 4 beasts, you go to Daniel 7. Daniel 7, dealing with the 3rd beast, Daniel 7 and 6. And after this I looked, and behold, another wild beast as a leopard, and it had 4 wings of a bird upon it. And the wild beast had 4 heads, and power was given to it. So now it has, that beast that he saw had 4 wings, 4 heads. Now in the next vision that he saw the he-goat. And when the he-goat with the horn between his eyes, when it was broke off, that horn became 4 other horns. So now, in the earlier vision, he saw a leopard with 4 heads. Now he's seeing a he-goat with 4 horns. Same beast, different visions, okay? Out of them came forth 1 strong horn. So he has 4 horns, and then out of that came 1 strong horn. And it grew very great toward the south and toward the host, the Israelites. And it magnified itself to the host of heaven. And there fell on the earth some of the host of heaven and of the stars, and they trampled them. So now, let me keep reading. And this shall be until the chief captain shall have delivered the captivity. And by reason of him, the sacrifice was disturbed, and he prospered. And the holy place shall be made desolate. And a sin offering was given for the sacrifice, and righteousness was cast down to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. And I heard one saint speaking, and a saint said to a certain one speaking, how long shall the vision continue, even the removal of the sacrifice and the bringing in of the sin of desolation? And how long shall the sanctuary and host be trampled? And he said to him, evening and morning there shall be 2,400 days. And then they corrected it with 300. And then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. And it came to pass, as I, Daniel, saw the vision and sought to understand it, behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man, and I heard the voice of a bank between the banks of Ubal, and he called and said, Gabriel, cause this man to understand the vision. Okay, so now, I know I just read a whole bunch, but I know that you got to get the context in order to understand what's going on in Daniel 70 weeks. So that's why we started Daniel chapter 8, which Daniel chapter 9 proceeds, go after. But now, this is exactly what's going on. He saw a vision of a ram. That ram had 2 horns. The second horn came up stronger than the previous horn. So then he saw a he-goat. He-goat moving real fast in, destroyed the ram. So then that he-goat had a horn between his head. Well, that horn broke off, and 4 horns replaced that 1 horn. And in the midst of those 4 horns, another horn came up. And when that horn came up, then the saints, the host of heavens, was actually bothered. They started to become trampled. Not only did they become trampled, then the offering was disturbed, and then the abomination of desolation was set up, and etc. So all of this happened when the little horn appeared upon the he-goat. But this is the point that people need to understand when dealing with the Most High. Okay, this was a vision for him, and now the angels got to explain to Daniel exactly what he saw. But couldn't the Most High had told him in the beginning exactly what it meant? Well, we know that he said to Moses he was going to speak directly. To everybody else, he was going to speak to them in dark sayings and parables. So the Most High, who created all of this stuff, he used the animals that had the characteristics of the people he was trying to tell Daniel about. So he used all of the things that he created. Remember they said in Israel, they told Abraham, your children will be like the stars in the sky, the sand of the sea. Told Jacob the same thing. Your children will be numerous like the stars in the sky. So once you see hosts of heaven, you automatically should think of the stars in the sky. So now when you see the stars in the sky, hosts of heaven, who should you think about? The descendants of Abraham or the descendants of Jacob, which would be the Israelites. This is how the Most High actually spoke, using these allegories and metaphors. So you got to understand the Most High himself, dealing with his story, dealing with the things that he bring out. He's a very allegorical power. He has the whole world that he can pull from because he created it. So instead of saying this power or that power, he called it a horn. So while in the Bible, when you're seeing horns, you should think of government. You should think of governing bodies. Okay? So now, let's keep going on, because now they got to explain the vision. So now, and it came to pass, as I, Daniel, saw the vision and sought to understand it, that behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man, and I heard the voice of the man between the banks of the Ubal, and he called and said, Gabriel, cause this man to understand the vision. And he came and stood near where I stood. And when he came, I was struck with awe and fell upon my face. But he said to me, understand, son of man, for yet the vision is for an appointed time. So what was the feasts for? The feasts were for an appointed time. Those feasts was a rehearsal for an appointed time. What was this vision for? This vision was for an appointed time. So when the appointed time occurred, the vision is done. So now, and while he spoke with me, I fell upon my face to the earth, and he touched me and set me on my feet. And he said, behold, I made thee know the things that shall come to pass at the end of the wrath, for the vision is yet for an appointed time. So the vision was for an appointed time, but the vision represented the end of the wrath, dealing with this appointed time. Not the beginning, not the middle, but the end of the wrath. So the things that you're reading about these governing bodies fighting each other. And eventually Jerusalem or the Israelites or the Jews become involved. And then they start getting trampled upon. And then the sanctuary gets broken down. The city gets broken down. And the abomination of desolation gets set up. All of this happens at the end of the Most High's wrath. Not the beginning, but the end. So now, verse 20. The ram which thou sawest had the horns is the king of the Medes and Persians. So now, the ram was the king of the Medes and Persians. So the ram that he saw is actually the second beast that he saw earlier, which is actually the shoulders which King Nebuchadnezzar saw. You see how all of this is going in circle. It's all lining up. They all saw things pertaining to this vision or this breakdown. So now, the he-goat is the king of the Greeks. So you have the third and fourth beast right here. Once again, you have the third and fourth beast. The Most High didn't jump. He's giving them what's going to occur between the third and fourth beast. So there was an appointed time that had to be fulfilled between the second and third beast. I don't mean third and fourth, that's Salakia, my bad. Between the second and third beast, there was an appointed time that had to occur dealing with wrath. Once again, dealing with wrath, there was an appointed time between the second and third beast. So now, the he-goat is the king of the Greeks, and the great horn which was between his eyes, he is the first king. And as for the one that was broken, in whose place there stood up four horns, four kings shall arise out of his nation, but not in their own strength. And at the latter time of their kingdom, when their sins are coming to the full, there shall arise a king and bold countenance and understanding riddles. So now, let's break down what he just said once again. At the end of the kingdom, dealing with the four horns. So now, at the end of the kingdoms, dealing with the Greeks, dealing with the four horns, at the end time of their kingdom, when their sins have reached to the heavens, when they had filled up the measure of their sins, when that time of the Gentiles have been fulfilled, there shall arise a king in bold countenance and understanding riddles, and his power shall be great, and he shall destroy wonderfully, and prosper, and practice, and shall destroy mighty men and the holy people. So what did the horn do? That horn that came up from the four, that horn came in and it cast down the host of heaven and it trampled the city and the sanctuary. We see the same thing here. It destroyed the mighty men and the holy people. And the yoke of his chain shall prosper. There is craft in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in the heart. And by craft shall destroy many, and he shall stand up for the destruction of many, and shall crush them as eggs in his hand. See now, and the vision the vision of the evening and morning that was mentioned is true. And do thou seal the vision, for it is for many days. So at this point in time, Daniel was told to seal the vision because it was still many days for this to occur. So now, we have, and this is Antiochus, you see how the Most High had the angels to describe Antiochus' epiphanies. he was like Satan incarnate right here. Once you saw everything describing him, you heard destruction, 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 deceit, destruction, destruction, deceit. So now, once you go to Daniel 9 now, so now we can get to Daniel 70 weeks. We had to get the backstory. So now, Daniel 9, in the first year of Darius, the son of Xerxes, of the seed of the Medes, who reigned over the kingdom of the Chaldeans, I, Daniel, understood by books the number of the years which was the word of the Lord to the prophet Jeremiah, even 70 years for the accomplishment of the desolation of Jerusalem. So Daniel has the scroll of the prophet Jeremiah, and Daniel is saying Jeremiah is talking about us and the captivity that we're in right now. So you can't make it be about America. Daniel is letting you know exactly what Jeremiah was talking about. So now, he was saying that this 70 years is almost up. The accomplishment of the 70 years is around the corner. I understand this by reading Jeremiah's prophecy. So now, he set his face toward the Lord to seek him diligently by prayer and supplications and fastings and sackcloth. And I prayed to the Lord my God and confessed and said, O Lord, the great and wonderful God, keeping thy covenant and thy mercy to them that love thee and to them that keep thy commandments. We have sinned. We have done iniquity. We have transgressed, and we have departed and turned aside from thy commandments and from thy judgments. And we have not hearkened to thy servants, the prophets, who spoke in thy name to our kings and our princes and our fathers, and to all the people of the land. So now he's just confessing all of the sins of Israel, including himself. So now, let's skip down. Verse 20, because he's just doing a lot of confessing. And while I was yet speaking and praying and confessing my sins and the sins of my people Israel, and bringing my pitiful case before the Lord my God concerning the holy mountain, yea, while I was yet speaking in prayer, behold, the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, came flying, and he touched me about the hour of the evening sacrifice. And he instructed me and spoke to me and said, O Daniel, I am now come forth to impart to thee understanding. At the beginning of thy supplication, the word came forth, and I come to tell thee, for thou art a man much beloved, therefore consider the matter, understand the vision. 70 weeks. Now look, consider the matter, understand the vision. What vision? So now, previously, the vision that Daniel received was the vision dealing with the ram and the he-goat. Daniel come in making supplications. Now the angel Gabriel comes down and say, I will make you understand the vision. So there's only one vision that he didn't have at this point. So the vision dealt with the Mede and Persians and the Grecians. At this point, no Romans was mentioned. So the vision only dealt with the Grecians and the Mede and Persians. So now, 70 weeks have been determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city for sin to be ended. Because remember, Daniel had just made the supplication have sinned. Israel have sinned. This was the supplication that Daniel was given. We have sinned. We have broke your commandments. So now, 70 weeks have been determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city for sin to be ended. That sin that they was in, it was determined to be ended at a point. And to seal up transgressions, Daniel said, we have transgressed thy laws. And to blot out the iniquities, and to make atonement for iniquities, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal the vision and the prophet, and to anoint the most holy. And thou shalt know and understand that from the going forth of the command. Well, let's start breaking down stuff right now. Okay, so we got the backstory. 70 weeks. So once you look up what 70 weeks are in the Greek of the Hebrews, you realize that 70 weeks is actually means sevens. So it's 70 cycles of sevens. So when you think of sevens being in cycles, what do you think about? You should think about jubilees. Once again, you should think about jubilees. So now, let me bring up a jubilee verses real fast dealing with it. Leviticus 25, I'm going to read 8 through 11. And thou shalt number 7 Sabbaths of years unto thee, 7 times 7 years. And the space of the 7 Sabbaths of years shall be unto thee 49 years. And thou shalt cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month, in the day of atonement. Shall ye make the trumpet sound throughout all your land. So you see, you have jubilees, and within those jubilees years, you also have the atonement. You have the jubilees and you have the atonement. In Daniel, what do you have? You have the jubilees and you have the atonement. Daniel 9 again. Daniel 9 and let me get back to it. Daniel 9 and 24. 70 weeks, jubilees, have been determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city for sin to be ended, to seal up transgressions, to blot out the iniquities, and to make an atonement for iniquities. So you have the atonement right here dealing with the jubilees, just like in Leviticus. This is all Hebrewic things. So now, Jubilees 25 and 10. And ye shall hallow the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and ye shall return every man unto his possession, and ye shall return every man unto his family. So now, what happens at the 50th Jubilee year? All things are a restoration of all things. All things are restored. All things go back to how they were. So now, you have the restoration dealing with the Jubilees also. So in Daniel, you have a restoration period or a resurrection period dealing with this. You'll see, dealing with this time also. But anyway, verse 11, a jubilee shall that 50th year be unto you. Ye shall not sow, neither reap that which groweth of itself in it, nor gather the grapes of it of thine vine undressed. So now, in the Melchizedek Quran scrolls or Quran scrolls in 11Q13, I'm going to read let's see, scrolls verses 6 through 8. I'm just going to read 6 through 8. It says, will make them return, and liberty will be proclaimed for them. to free them from the debt of all their iniquities. What do it say? Daniel 9:24. To seal up transgressions and to blot out the iniquities. At this Jubilee, according to the Quran scrolls, who was the Essenes who kept up with this stuff also, during that Jubilee year, liberty will be proclaimed to them to free them from the debt of all their iniquities. Hopefully you're seeing the correlation between Daniel's 70 weeks and what's actually going on dealing with the Mosaic covenant and all of the ordinances that were set up. But anyway, and this will happen in the first week of the Jubilee, which follow 9 Jubilees, and the Day of Atonement is the end of the 10th Jubilee, in which atonement shall be made for all the sons of light, that will be the Israelites, and for the men of the lot of Melchizedek over them according to all their works. So now, it was a known fact or teaching that the atonement will occur at the end of the 10th Jubilee. So you can do your math, but dealing with Jeremiah 70 years is because they didn't allow the land rest or that 7-year Sabbathal land rest to occur for 490 years. Therefore, they had to do the 70 years in captivity to atone for their 490 years. They transgressed that land law. So now you see that this is an additional 70 groups of 7, which is another 490. And at the end of the 10th Jubilee, so 10 times 49, 490. 10 times 49, 490. At the end of that 10th Jubilee, 490, once again, atonement shall be made for all of the sons of light and all of the lot of Melchizedek. So hopefully this is interesting to you or making sense. But now, let's keep going. Let's see here. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city. So this will be the Jews and Jerusalem. So now, it tells you what the people in the holy city has to do now. Once again, this is the actions of which what the people in the holy city had to do. The first thing they had to do was finish the transgression. So Daniel has already been supplicating the transgression that Israel was going through, which led to the Babylonian captivity. So now they're going to finish the transgression. So how do they finish the transgression? Once we go to 2 Maccabees chapter 6, see, this is all Hebraic literature also. The problem is, us Messianics, we skip over the things that happened in the Grecian captivity or dealing with the Grecians and the Seleucids, and we go straight to the Rome. We can't do that. We can't go from Persia to Rome and leave a whole beast out without knowing the history behind that beast and what all occurred during that beast. So we have what we call the Apocrypha, which they say is non-canonical, extra information, but it has the Maccabean history in it. So now, let's go through that Maccabean or the Grecian period and find out what happened. Because once again, don't forget, Daniel 8 only spoke of Persia and Greece, or the Greeks. Daniel 9, I'm going to help you understand the vision more. So we're going to be talking about either Persia or Greek. So now I'm going to say we're going to dwell in the Greeks. So now, Maccabees, 2 Maccabees 6. I want to start at verse 12. It says, "Now I beseech those that read this book, that they be not discouraged for these calamities, but that they judge those punishments not to be for destruction, but for a chastising of our nation. For it is a token of his great goodness when wicked doers are not suffered any long time, or forthwith punished. For not as with other nations, whom the Lord patiently forbeareth to punish, till they be come to the fullness of their sins, so dealeth he with us, lest that, being come to the height of sin, afterwards he should take vengeance on us." So what he was saying is, when the Most High dealt with Israel, he dealt with their sins right away. When he dealt with the nations, he let their sins fill up. He let them fill up the measure of their sins. He let them go through what we call the time of the Gentiles. He let them go through all of their sin, fill it up, then he destroyed them with one great destruction. Meanwhile, with Israel, he never lets it fill all the way up. He always take that punishment straight to them to get them on the right path, so they can quit sinning on top of sinning on top of sinning. This is the understanding that the Israelites had during the third beast. So for people who want to say the Most High, the transatlantic slave trade is what Deuteronomy 28:68 is about, no, the Most High punished Israel right away. He didn't let them build up their sins. So now, so we have in Daniel 70 weeks to finish the transgression. So, well, let me keep reading. 16. "And therefore he never withdraweth his mercy from us, and though he punished with adversity, yet doth he never forsake his people." Second Ezra was also found in the Apocrypha 4:37. "By measure had he measured the times, 70 weeks, 70 years, 1,335 days, 1,290 days, 1,260 days. The time of the end, the time is at hand, the time is near. By measure had he measured the times, and by number had he numbered the times." You see, he gives numbers, he gives measurements of the times, and he does not move nor stir them until the said measure be fulfilled. So, for them to finish the transgression, that transgression they had to finish had to come within that time measurement that the Most High gave. So it had to fall between that second and third beast. The measurement of time in Daniel 8 was the second and third beast. That was the measurement of time between the Persians and the Greeks. That's the measurement that he gave. So that transgression the transgression of the people and the holy city had to be accomplished within that measurement of time. So now, and it says, "and to make an end of sin." So let me read it how it should be read again. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to make an end of sins. So what was Daniel saying? We have sinned, Father. We have transgressed the law. So how could they end the transgression of the law? They had to re-establish it. Once again, they had to re-establish it. At this point in time, the temple is destroyed. There, sorry, y'all. At this point in time, the temple is destroyed. The temple is gone. So, at this point in time, the temple is destroyed. So, in order to make an end of those sins, in order for the people to make an end of those sins, which was a transgression of the law in the Mosaic covenant, what did they have to do? They had to reestablish the law. So now, you go to 1 Maccabees chapter 4. I want to start at verse 41. This is after, well, we're going to read it. Then Judas appointed certain men to fight against those that were in the fortress until he had cleansed the sanctuary. So he chose priests of blameless conversation, such as had pleasure in the law, who cleansed the sanctuary and bare out the defiled stones into an unclean place. And when they consulted what to do with the altar of burnt offerings, which was profane, they thought it best to pull it down, lest it should be a reproach to them, because the heathen had defiled it. Wherefore they pulled it down and laid up the stones in the mountain of the temple in a convenient place, until there should come a prophet to show what should be done with them. So now, even in the Grecian era, even at the time of the Maccabees, they understood that another prophet was going to come. So we can't end the story with the Maccabees. We can't. They understood that another prophet was going to come in the future and tell them what to do with the sanctuary. But anyway, verse 47. Then they took whole stones according to the law and built a new altar according to the former, and made up the sanctuary and the things that were within the temple, and hollowed the courts. They made also new holy vessels, and into the temple they brought the candlestick, and the altar of burnt offerings, and of incense, and the table. And upon the altar they burned incense, and the lamps that were upon the candlestick they lighted, that they might give light in the temple. Furthermore, they set the loaves upon the table, and spread out the veils, and finished all the works which they had begun. Now on the 20th day in the 9th month, which is called the month Casluel, in the 148th year, they rose up betimes in the morning and offered sacrifice according to the law upon the new altar of burnt offerings which they had made. So now we see that they, the Israelites, during the time of the Maccabees, they had put an end to the transgression of the law by re-establishing the covenant, redoing the covenantal services. So we see this being proclaimed in the Maccabees. So now, let's keep going on. 70 weeks are determined upon thy holy people and thy city to make reconciliation for iniquity, which is called atonement. Make atonement for iniquities. Daniel was talking about, he was putting the supplications out about the sin, and they needed an atonement, this, and that. So now, you got 1 Maccabees chapter 4 and 2 Maccabees chapter 10. 1 Maccabees 4 and 53. And offered sacrifice according to the law upon the new altar of burnt offerings which they had made. Look at what time, at what day the heathen had profaned it. Even in that was it dedicated with psalms and citherns and harps and cymbals, that all the people fell upon their faces worshiping and praising the God of heaven who had given them good success. And so they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days and offered burnt offerings with gladness and sacrificed the sacrifice of deliverance and praise. So we have them making the sacrifice of sacrifice, the sacrifice of deliverance. We have them putting up the new, making the burnt offerings. These are some of the atonement offerings that they had not made within those 2 years or those years that the Grecian had destroyed the temple and was doing all the things to Israel. So now they was putting an end to all of this stuff through re-establishing the covenant. So now, here's another one from 2 Maccabees 10. And having cleansed the 10:3, and having cleansed the temple, they made another altar, and striking stones, they took fire out of them, and offered a sacrifice after 2 years, and set forth incense and lights and showbread. When that was done, they fell flat down and besought the Lord that they might come no more into such troubles. But if they sinned any more, so now these offerings were supposed to take them away from the sin. So this is what they said: if they sinned any more against him, that he himself would chasten them with mercy, and that they might not be delivered into the blasphemous and barbarous nations. So they didn't want to go be dealt with the Gentiles no more. They wanted the Father to chastise them if they ever sinned again. So for them to do away with that sin, they had to atone for it. How did they set the atonement up? They started sacrificing on the new altar. They started sacrificing those burnt offerings and those offerings of praises and etc. So now, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to bring in everlasting righteousness. Once again, Daniel 70 weeks, just expounding on the vision, dealing with the horn and the he-goat. So now, so the bringing in the everlasting righteousness in Daniel 70 weeks deals with the horn and the he-goats. Okay, we can't make it be by anything not the horn and the he-goats, dealing with Daniel 70 weeks. So now, 1 Maccabees 4, 2 Maccabees 2 and 3. 1 Maccabees 4:42. So he chose priests of blameless conversation, such as had pleasure in the law. Once again, they're bringing in everlasting righteousness. What was everlasting righteousness? According to the Mosaic covenant. Now, we're not talking about new covenant things right now. We're talking about what they were in, dealing with the Maccabees and the Medo-Persians, and what they was in dealing with the Babylonians. To them, everlasting righteousness would have been the law of Moses. Once again, we're not in the new covenant right now. We're not in the New Testament. We're still in the Old Testament. So to them, their everlasting righteousness would have been bringing back the law. So now, so he chose priests of blameless conversation, such as had pleasure in the law, and offered sacrifice according to the law upon the new altar of burnt offerings which they made. Now we're going to go to 2 Maccabees 2, 17 through 22. We hope also that the God that delivered all his people and gave them all an heritage and the kingdom and the priesthood and the sanctuary, as he promised in the law. So now, what is everlasting righteousness? The law. What did the law, the Mosaic law, promise those under the Mosaic covenant? A heritage, a kingdom, a priesthood, and a sanctuary. So, if they were outside of the Mosaic covenant, what did they not have? They did not have, they was not God's people. They did not have a heritage. They did not have a kingdom. They did not have a priesthood. They did not have a sanctuary. So they did not have righteousness. So now, through the covenant of that Moses covenant. To them, this was the way that they perceived their righteousness. So now, 2:18, and he promised in the law, will surely have mercy upon us and gather us together out of every land under heaven unto the holy place. For he had delivered us out of great troubles and had purified the place. So under the Mosaic covenant, the Mosaic law, the gathering was for that law. It was a Mosaic covenant thing that gathering was. So now as concerning Judas Maccabeus and his brethren and the purification of the great temple and the dedication of the altar and the wars against Antiochus Epiphanes and Eupator, his son, Eupator, or whatever it is, his son, and the manifest signs that came from heaven unto those that behaved themselves manfully in their honor for Judaism. So it has the word Judaism in the Apocrypha. So that being but a few, they overcame the whole country and chased barbarous multitudes and recovered again the temple renowned all the world over, and freed the city and upheld the laws which were going down, the Lord being gracious unto them with all favor. So we see how the city, how the people brought back in everlasting righteousness. And the last one's Maccabees 3:1. First Maccabees, I think. Let me see, make sure. Sorry, second Maccabees 3:1. Now, when the holy city was inhabited with all peace, and the laws were kept very well, because of godliness of Ananias, the high priest, and his hatred of wickedness. So we see at the point of time, righteousness has came back because the laws were being kept, which brought the city peace. So now, 70 weeks are to determine upon thy people and thy holy city to seal up the vision and prophet. So now, I want to reference Daniel for this. Let me just make sure. Okay, there we go. I'm going to reference Daniel for this. Daniel chapter 8, 15 and 16. Once again, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and thy holy city to seal up the vision and prophet. So Daniel 8, 15 and 16. And it came to pass when I, even I, Daniel, had seen the vision and sought for the meaning, then behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of, it's supposed to be Ubal, but it says Ulea in the Masoretic, which called and said, Gabriel, make this man to understand the vision. So now we have a prophet having to understand the vision. 70 weeks are determined for the vision to be sealed up and the prophet. 70 weeks are determined for the vision and prophet to be sealed up. Once again, there was no prophet during the Maccabean era. They were looking for a prophet. They were waiting on the prophet. There was no prophet. So by the time the Maccabean era hit, the prophet was sealed up. The next prophet didn't come until the New Testament, John the Baptist. So now, prophets were sealed up by the time the Maccabean era hit. So now, 70 weeks are determined to seal a vision and prophet. So we can't take the sealing of the prophet past Daniel. Daniel talking about what was going to happen between the Persians and the Grecians. So that sealing of vision and prophet can't go past the Grecian. It can't go past that timeline. So now, let's go to Daniel 8:27. And I, Daniel, fainted and was sick certain days. Afterward, I rose up and did the king's business, and I was astonished at the vision, but none understood it. So once again, he has the vision. It's all about the vision that he got without the understanding. So now, Daniel 11 and 33. And they that understand among the people shall instruct many, yet they shall fall by the sword, and by flame, by captivity, and by spoil many days. So now, these people understand. So we have Daniel not understanding, but later on, we're going to have people that do understand. Daniel 12:9, and he said, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. So now, seal up the vision and prophet. That vision and the prophet was sealed until the time of the end. But now, let's see what happens at that time of the end. Let's see what happens. First Maccabees 4:46, and laid up the stones in the mountain of the temple in a convenient place, until there should come a prophet to show what should be done with them. First Maccabees 9:27. So there was a great affliction in Israel, the like whereof was not since the time that a prophet was not seen among them. So the affliction of Israel was worse, like times that the prophets was not among them. So the Maccabees was reflecting back to that, because at their time they did not have no prophet. So the time of the end, the vision was going to be unsealed. The prophet was going to be unsealed. And then what happens? When it's completed, the prophet and vision is sealed again. No more opening that prophet and vision, because that what had to be fulfilled has already occurred. Once again, seal it till the time of the end. Then they unsealed it so it can happen. So then the prophet and the vision is over, completed, it's sealed. That had to happen before the Maccabees, because when the Maccabees came around, there was no prophet. So the prophet had already been sealed. Whatever was supposed to happen has been unsealed, and that prophet had to be sealed up. Hopefully that's making sense. Hopefully that is. So now, it says also, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people in thy holy city to anoint the most holy. So once you go into the wording or do a word study, you see that this is talking about the sanctuary or the holy of holies. This is not talking about a person per se. This is talking more of a temple, the holy of holies. So now, First Maccabees chapter 4, 41 through 43. Then Judas appointed certain men to fight against those that were in the fortress, until he had cleansed the sanctuary. So he chose priests of blameless conversation, such as had pleasure in the law. Once again, back to law, back to cleansing. Who cleansed the sanctuary and bear out the defiled stones into an unclean place. So now, who bear out the stones into an defiled stones, took them, threw them away, let them go in an unclean place. So you see in the Maccabean era that the most holy was anointed, or it was cleansed. It was brought, it was filled with the law again. It was filled with the showbread, the candlestick, with the observance. So with the dedication, with the lights and all that stuff. So it was cleansed. So to me, that has to be the anointing of it when it was cleansed. When it was cleansed, it was anointed. I don't think that it's talking about literally pouring oil all over the sanctuary or all over the Holy of Holies. I don't think that it's talking about that. Now, you might think it is, but I don't think personally it's talking about that. So now, verse 25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks, the street shall be built again and the wall even in troublous times. So now, once you read it out of the Septuagint, which predates the Masoretic, This is what it says. And thou shalt know and understand that from the going forth of the command for the answer and for the building of Jerusalem until Christ the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks, and then the time shall return, and the street shall be built, and the wall, and the time shall be exhausted. So now, in my Bible, study Bible right here, the discipleship study Bible. Let's see what it has right there. Because this is what made me relook at all of this. It says, an anointed prince could either be Zerubbabel or Joshua. See Zechariah 4:14, Ezra 2:2, 3:2, Haggai 1:1-14. So what I want to do, I want to look at Haggai 2:23. It says, in that day, said the Lord of hosts, will I take thee, O Zerubbabel, my servant, the son of Shealtiel, said the Lord, and will make thee a signet, representation of authority. For I have chosen thee, said the Lord of hosts. So Zerubbabel was a representation of the Most High and his authority, aka a Messiah. So now, once you go to, let me find it. Also, once you go to Maccabees, let me see if I can find it real fast. I think it's in Second Maccabees. I could be. Now, hold on. Once you go to First Maccabees 9, and I'm going to read verses 21 about Judas Maccabees. It says, well, we'll start at verse 19. Then Jonathan and Simon took Judas their brother and buried him in the sepulchre of his fathers in Modin. Moreover, they bewailed him, and all Israel made great lamentation for him, and mourned many days, saying, how is the valiant man fallen that delivered Israel? So now, Judas Maccabees was considered a deliverer of Israel. So once I go into the same First Maccabees 9:21 out of my New Revised Standard Bible with the Apocrypha, who uses a different codex in order to translate into English. Let's see how they phrased it. First Maccabees 9:21. First Maccabees 9:21 says, I'm going to start at 19. Then Jonathan and Simon took their brother Judas and buried him in the tomb of their ancestors at Modin, and wept for him. All Israel made a great lamentation for him. They mourned many days and said, how is the mighty fallen, the Savior of Israel? So Judas was considered a savior of Israel, a deliverer of Israel. He was also considered a Messiah of Israel. So it could be any of those. It could have been any of those people. So now let's keep going though. But I'm going toward more of Zerubbabel, instead of Judas and all them, because he lived around the time when they was getting heat for trying to build up the wall or rebuild Jerusalem. But anyway, it says 7 weeks and 60, and the street shall be built again in the wall, even in troublous time. So you go to Ezra 4:21-24. Give ye now commandment to cause these men to cease, and that this city be not builded until another commandment shall be given from me. Take heed now that ye fail not to do this. Why should damage grow to hurt of the kings? Now when the copy of King Xerxes' letter was read before Raham and Shemaiah the scribe and their companions, they went up to haste to Jerusalem and to the Jews, and made them cease by force and power. Then ceased the work of the house of God, which is at Jerusalem. So it ceased until the 2nd year of the reign of Darius, king of Persia. So you see some of the things that was going on. So now, it started off about what all that was going to be accomplished within those 70 weeks. So now they're breaking down the 70 weeks. Just because you want to say, well, look, you're in the Grecians, now you're all the way back in the Persians. What's going on? So first it gives you the overall, it gives you the overview, and then it gives you the detail on what led to the Grecians. How did it lead up to the Grecians? So you got the 7 weeks, and then you got the 62 weeks. So now that's pretty much 69 right there. But it says, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. So now, I think this is the problem with when Christians come in here. I think this is when the Christianity gets off, because they see the word Messiah right there, and even my mentor, Mr. Bell, showed me this in the Greek and in the Hebrew. But in any Old Testament only can tell you this also, dealing with the anointed person being a Messiah, just like Cyrus was an anointed person, he was a Messiah. So just because you see the word Messiah right there, it doesn't mean that it's talking about Christ. And the heat is coming from people are putting Christ, I believe, here in Daniel 70 weeks, where he doesn't belong. I believe this is something not dealing with Christ. Therefore, this is why Christ nor the disciples ever alluded to this being about Christ. They could have easily said, hey, you remember when Christ was going to be cut off at the end of the 69th week? You remember after the 62 weeks that followed the 7 weeks, Christ is going to be cut off? This is that time. Nobody ever did that. This is what we do in Christianity right now. And then the old covenant only are whooping us dealing with this literature because they're correct. Because this don't have to do with Christ. So you can't dispute it because they're actually correct. This 70 weeks don't deal with Christ. So there's no need to argue against them. But I'm going to go into the allusion, what is pulled from the 70 weeks that deals with Christ later. See, just because he don't deal with them directly, it doesn't mean that he cannot allude to it. That's, the whole Bible was an allusion. You go from Genesis, you can see Genesis being displayed in Jeremiah. You can see Genesis being displayed in Ezekiel. You can see Genesis being displayed in Romans. You can see Genesis being displayed in Zechariah. So you always have allusions being displayed, even though you have the original story. You always have different books pulling from their original story in an allusion. So yeah, you can pull from Christ's life dealing with Daniel 70 weeks. Of course you can. The allusion is strong, but you can't say that it's about Christ. That's the problem. That's the difference of what's going on here. But now, let's keep going. Let's keep going. So shall Messiah be cut off? So we're looking for an anointed person to be cut off. So the anointed people is going to have to be Cyrus, or it's going to have to be someone who has been anointed. So Who really pretty much does the anointing, is about the anointing in Israel? That would be the high priest. The high priest is the one that's doing the anointing, is being anointed. And I love my discipleship study Bible. I'm telling y'all, my wife bought this, she did her thing. And I just now cracked it open, and I actually started reading. I was like, man, these Torah only people were straight with this. They were right with this information. I can't deny it. I'm in it for the truth. I'm not in it for to puff up knowledge and all that stuff. I'm in it for the truth. So now here, it has it right here, 926. In this book right here, Discipleship Study Bible. The post-anointed probably refers to Ananias the third. See Maccabees 2, 2 Maccabees 4:23 through 28, who was murdered 171 BCE. The prince to come surely refers to Antiochus the fourth, who will incite the war. But anyway, so 2 Maccabees, and I actually got it right here. 2 Maccabees 3:1, 2 Maccabees 4, from the Good News Translation, GNT. It says, the argument between Ananias and Simon. Now, we read earlier that it was peace going on inside of Jerusalem finally after 2 years. They was finally keeping the law. Everlasting righteousness was finally brought back in. Everything was flowing correctly. Why? Because Ananias hated wickedness. Who was Ananias? Ananias was the high priest at that time. And he hated wickedness. He made sure everybody was doing the law correctly under the second temple ordinances. Not the first temple. First temple did things different than the second temple. But under the second temple ordinances, he was making sure everything was perfect. So now, once you go to 2 Maccabees 3:1, when Ananias was high priest in Jerusalem, the holy city enjoyed peace and prosperity, and its laws were strictly obeyed because he was devout and hated evil. The kings of Syria and Egypt honored the temple and presented it with expensive gifts. And King Seleucus, ruler of all Asia, even used to pay the cost of the temple sacrifices from the revenues he collected. He dared to accuse Ananias of plotting against the government. Ananias, who not only had made donations to Jerusalem and had protected the temple, but who was eager to see that all our laws were obeyed. So you see how righteous Ananias was, the anointed, that Messiah, that high priest, who had brought peace, prosperity to Jerusalem under the third beast. You see, it's flowing perfectly. The Messiah, that would be a Messiah-like figure that brings peace after all the chaos comes. He brings peace. He makes sure the law is being kept. That's Messiah material. So now, once you go to 2 Maccabees 4:34, then Menelaus secretly persuaded Andronicus to kill Ananias. So Andronicus went to Ananias and deceived him with a friendly greeting and with promises of safety. Although Ananias was suspicious, Andronicus finally lured him away from the safety of the temple and immediately murdered him in cold blood. What did it say? And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. So now, in Daniel chapter 8, once again, what does that horn do? That horn, let me find it. Which they also call the chief captain, and this shall be unto the chief captain. Here it says the prince the chief captain shall have delivered the captivity. So now it's a captivity. And by reason of him, the sacrifice was disturbed. So now he stopped the sacrifices and he prospered. And the holy place was made desolate. He made the temple desolate, and the sin offering was given for the sacrifices, and righteousness was cast down. He brought unholiness back to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. And how long shall the sanctuary and host be trampled? So you see all of the things that this chief captain, this horn in the middle of the Grecian Empire, or this prince, the people of the prince shall come and shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. What does Antiochus do? Destroy the city and the sanctuary. So now, reference Daniel 8:11. Yea, he magnified himself to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of the sanctuary was cast down. Maccabees, right here. Let's see if we can find some real fast. Maccabees. We could read Maccabees 3, and we could read verse 51. For thy sanctuary is trodden down and profane, and thy priests are in heaviness and brought low. Verse 45. Now Jerusalem lay void as a wilderness, there was none of her children that went in or out. The sanctuary also was trodden down, and aliens kept the stronghold. The heathen had their habitation in that place, and joy was taken from Jacob, and the pipe with the harp ceased. So what did it say right here? And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. So we have those aliens coming in, doing what Antiochus said, destroying everything. And let's see if we can find it also. First Maccabees 1:37 through 39. Thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary and defiled it. These are the people of the prince. Insomuch that the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them, whereupon the city was made an habitation of strangers, and became strange to those that were born in her, and her own children left her. Her sanctuary was laid waste like a wilderness. Her feasts were turned into mourning, her Sabbaths into reproach, her honor into contempt. So, we have it right here in Maccabees what's going on. So now I'm going to read 1 Maccabees 1:29. 2 years later, Antiochus sent a large army from Messiah against the town of Judea, against the towns of Judea. When the soldiers entered Jerusalem, their commander spoke to the people, offering the terms of peace and completely deceiving them. Then suddenly launched a fierce attack on the city, dealing it a major blow and killing many of the people. So hopefully y'all are seeing what Daniel 70 weeks is about. So now let's keep reading. And the end thereof shall be with a flood, until the end of the war desolations are determined. So once you go to Daniel 11:40-45. So now we are in Daniel 11. See, Daniel 10 and 11. Well, let's go there real fast so I can show you what I'm talking about. Daniel 10 and 11. Wrong book. Now I got so many books to choose from, though. Daniel 10, it starts off in the third year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a thing was revealed to Daniel, who was called Belteshazzar. So now you have something else being shown to Daniel. And he's saying, I just want to go to skip to it. Verse 13, verse 12. And he said to me, fear not, Daniel, from the first day that thou didst set thine heart to understand and to afflict thyself before the Lord thy God. So he take him right back to what was going on before he received the prophecy of the 70 weeks when he was afflicting himself and all that stuff. Thy words were heard, and I am come because of thy words. But the prince of the kingdom of the Persians withstood me 21 days. Persians, who do we have? Second beast. And behold, Michael, one of the princes, came to help me. And I left him there with the chief of the kingdom of the Persians. And I have come to inform thee all, that thou shalt befall thy people in the last days, for the vision is yet for many days. And when he had spoken with me according to these words, I turned my face to the ground and was pricked in the heart. So this was called the last days. The last days of what? The last days of those kingdoms. The last days of the kingdom that that the Father needed them to get to. So this was the last days of the iniquities being abound, everlasting righteousness, all that, the last days of that. But now, Daniel 10 and 20. And he said, knowest thou therefore when I come to thee? And now I will return to fight with the prince of the Persians. And I was going in, and the prince of the Greeks came. So you have the he-goat, you have the ram and the he-goat right here in Daniel chapter 10. So you have the ram and the he-goat in Daniel chapter 8. Then you have the ram and the he-goat in Daniel chapter 10. So why wouldn't we think that Daniel chapter 9 won't have to do with either the ram or the he-goat? Why would he skip from ram, he-goat to something totally different? Ram, he-goat, ram, he-goat. It doesn't make sense. It follows one logic. It follows the logic. Ram, he-goat. Ram, he-goat. Ram, he-goat. Ram, he-goat. Greeks, Persian. Sorry, Persian, Greeks, Persian, Greeks, Persian, Greeks, Persian, Greeks. So now, the Persians, I was going in, and the prince of the Greeks came. But I will tell thee that which is ordained in the scripture of truth. And there is no one that holds with me in these matters but Michael, your prince. Then in the first year of Cyrus stood to strengthen and confirm this. And now I will tell you the truth. Behold, there shall yet rise up 3 kings in Persia. So we have Persia right here. Daniel chapter 11. Persia. We have the ram right here. We have the third beast. The second beast right here. And the fourth shall be far richer than all. And after that, he is master of his wealth. He shall rise up against all the kingdoms of the Greeks. So now you have the Greeks and the Persians fighting. You have the ram and the he-goat butting heads, fighting. You have the second and third beast coming into play, fighting. So once again, in Daniel chapter 11, he's hearing more about the ram and the he-goat, the Persians and the Grecians. And then you keep reading now until the story eventually turns over to nothing but the Grecians and what leads up to the destruction of that little horn, or that horn in the head. And verse 3, and there shall rise up a mighty king, and he shall be a lord of a great empire, and shall do according to his will. So you have the Persians coming against the Greeks, and then King, who was that Caesar? Which is the first Caesar? Alexander the Great, I believe. They have Alexander the Great come. Alexander the Great, mighty king. And he's lord of a great empire, and shall do, I think he was a Macedonian, I believe. But He represented the Greeks. And when his kingdom shall stand up, it shall be broken and shall be divided to the four winds of heaven. The same thing that he saw in Daniel chapter 8. It was a horn, and then the horn broke into four different horns. Here, it was a king, then the king got destroyed into four different places. His kingdom went four different places. In you have the third beast, you have a leopard with four wings, four heads. So you see the four everywhere. This is the same exact story. So in Daniel chapter 11, we are still within the Grecians. So once you keep reading all Daniel chapter 11, and it gives you the breakdown of what's happening between these four horns, and then when Antiochus Epiphanes finally come in, and all of the havoc that Antiochus Epiphanes does, fighting against the Egyptians, fighting against the Seleucids, the other Seleucids, and etc. He's fighting against everybody, and he's having the deceit. He's fighting against the holy people, and eventually that leads you to Daniel chapter 12. But anyway, so we have, I'm sorry I went off on that rant, but I'm trying to show y'all exactly what Daniel is about. So now, Daniel 11, 40 through 45 now. And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots, and with horsemen, and with many ships. And he shall enter into the countries, and shall overflow and pass over. So, if you look up that word overflow, what it means, it actually means flood. I didn't already look it up. You can look it up. It actually means flood. So, once you go back to original Daniel 70 weeks, and at the end thereof shall be with a flood. And then Daniel 11, and at the time of the end, they shall come and overflow, which is also flood, and pass over. So this is about the end with a flood, right here in Daniel chapter 11. He shall enter, he shall also in the glorious land, he shall enter also in the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown. What does it say? I'm going to read Daniel 9 again. And at the end thereof shall be with a flood, and until the end of the war, desolations are determined. So this is a war going on. The flood, the armies, the end of the war, desolations are determined. So now we understand that this is a war going on. So now he shall also enter into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown. This is war. But these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab and the chief of the children of Ammon. And he shall stretch forth his hand upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. But he shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver, and of all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his steps. But tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Therefore he should go forth with great fury to destroy and to utterly make away many. And he shall plant the tabernacle of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. This is back to Jerusalem. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. The end shall therefore be with the flood, and until the end of the war, desolations with an S are determined. There's going to be more than one, many desolations from the war. So now we see that he has came to his end now. But verse 27, well, at that point, he's coming to his end, and nobody's going to help him. So now, while he's coming to his end, and no one is helping him, what's going to occur? Because this is, Daniel 11, 40 to 45. When he comes to the end, what's going to occur? You can finish reading Daniel 11 to see. I jumped ahead. But now, Let's go back to Daniel 9:27. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. So that prince, that evil prince, is confirming the covenant with many for 1 week. Not Christ. That prince is confirming the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. He causes the sacrifice and the gifts to cease. He does. That prince that's coming with the army, that's coming with the flood, he is causing the sacrifice and oblation to stop or to cease. So once you go to Daniel 8:11 and 31, yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of the sanctuary was cast down. 31, an arm shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that make desolate. Maccabees 1 and starting at 43. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath. For the king, this is Antiochus, had sent letters by messengers into Jerusalem and the cities of Judah that they should follow the strange laws of the land and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days and pollute the sanctuary and the holy people, set up altars of groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts. So, what he's going to do? Pollute the sanctuary, take away the daily sacrifice. What did Antiochus do in Maccabees? Polluted the sanctuary, took away the daily sacrifice. Okay, so now, Daniel 8:13 and 14. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint, which spake, how long shall the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation to give both the sanctuary and the host be trodden underfoot? And he said unto me, until 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. What did at the end of this, what did Judas the Maccabean do? I just read it instead of trying to find it in here. Let me scroll up real fast. Let me just scroll up. And if you want this PDF, just inbox me and I'll send it to you. I created this myself to help me go through it. Maccabees 4:41. Then Judas appointed certain men to help fight against those that were in the fortress until he had cleansed the sanctuary. Verse 43, who cleansed the sanctuary and bare out the defiled stones unto an unclean place. So what happened in Daniel chapter 8, verses 13 and 14? Verse 14. And he said unto me, until 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. So at the 2,300 days, this deals with the Maccabean era. So now, once you go to Daniel 12 and 11, talking about these same events. Let's read it. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that make desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. First Maccabees 1:45. He ordered them not to offer burnt offerings, grain offerings, or wine offerings in the temple, and commanded them to treat Sabbaths and festivals as ordinary days. So the same sacrifices that was taken away that Daniel 12 was talking about It's the same sacrifices that was taken away that Daniel 8 is talking about, which is the same thing that the temple being destroyed, what Daniel 9 is talking about, which is the same thing that Antiochus did, dealing with all of the wars and stuff spoken of in Daniel 10. All of this is about the Maccabean period. We got to study more of all of Israel's history, because once you skip from one to the other, you missed out a whole bunch of information. And then that's how we start teaching things that doesn't line up to scripture. So we can pull from this stuff, but we can't make this be exactly about this stuff. So now, and for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate. And we have Daniel 8, 13, 14, 31, 12, and 11. We just read it. And I want to read into Daniel 12 and 11. Even until the consummation that hold on. No, this is the end of it, I think. Yeah, this is the end of it. Even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate, or if you look it up, that's the desolator. So it means, and for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon Antiochus Epiphanes when he reached his end. And then you can reference Daniel 11 like we just did. And some of them of understanding shall fall away. Well, let me just read it. Daniel 11, 35, 36, and 45. And some of them of understanding shall fall, to try them and to purge and to make them white, even to the time of the end, because it is yet for a time appointed. So this is about the Maccabean era. This was about them and the time appointed for them. So they were being purged and made white. We see the same thing in the New Testament, a New Testament thing, when they were going through tribulation and they was being purged and made white. So when the Most High was putting all of Israel through all of these captivities and tribulation periods, they were being tried, and the people who returned to the Most High, they were being made white. They were putting on their white garments. So now, verse 36. And the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished. For that is determined shall be done. So until the time is accomplished, he's going to be able to do all this stuff. And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain, yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. First Maccabees 1, 454. Now in the 50th day of the month, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar and builded altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side. Once again, First Maccabees 1, 54. Now the 15th day of the month Caslu, in the 145th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar and builded idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side. Now, 2 Maccabees 9 from the Good Translation, the Good News Translation, the GNT. What does it say in Daniel 11? Everything is going to be glorious for that king, yet he should come to his end, and nobody should help him. So during the process of him coming to his end, he's destroying destruction upon destruction. He's deceiving people. He's tricking people. You know, he's doing all of this stuff. He's building up a military. He's getting all of these props from his army, from his side, and he's just bringing a destruction upon everybody. But it was prophesied he was going to come to an end, and nobody was going to be able to help him. So now, 2 Maccabees 9, let's just read a few verses starting in verse 1. About this time, Antiochus was retreating in disorder from Persia. So once again, from Persia, you have the he-goat ram right here. Well, anyway, where he entered the city of Persepolis and had attempted to rob a temple. You see how evil he was? And take control of the city. The people took arms and attacked Antiochus, forced his army to retreat in disgrace. When he reached Ecbatana, he was told what had happened to the forces of Nicanor and Timothy. He became furious and decided to make the Jews pay for the defeat he had suffered. So he ordered his chariot driver not to stop until they reached Jerusalem. With great arrogance, he said, I will turn Jerusalem into a graveyard full of Jews. But he did not know that he was heading straight for God's judgment. In fact, as soon as he had said these words, the all-seeing Lord, the God of Israel, struck him down with an invisible but fatal blow. He was seized with sharp intestinal pains from which there was no relief, a fitting punishment for the man who had tortured others in so many terrible ways. But this is no way caused him to give up his pride. Instead, he became more arrogant than ever, and breathing out fiery threats against the Jews, he gave orders to drive even faster. As a result, he fell out of his chariot, and with such a thud that it made every bone in his body ache. His arrogant pride made him think he had the superhuman strength to make ocean waves obey him and to weigh high mountains on a pair of scales. But suddenly, he fell flat on the ground and had to be carried off on a stretcher, a clear sign to everyone of God's power. Even the eyes of the godless man were crawling with worms, and he lived in terrible pain and agony. The stink was so bad that his entire army was sickened, and no one was able to come close enough to carry him around. Yet only a short while before, he thought he could take hold of the stars. So you see his end, pain in the stomach, still arrogant, fell out of his chariot, pretty much broke all his bones, his whole body ached, and then worms start crawling out his eyes. He was in a terrible pain. This was the Most High's response. This was him coming to an end and no one being able to help him. So now, hopefully we see all that. You said, why is that not canonized? Oh, brother, the reason why this is not canonized because the Council of Nicaea looked at these documents and said that it was not needed in order to promote the agenda that they had, to promote everybody to come under the governing body of Rome. They did not need to hear about Israel revolting against the leaders. They did not need to hear about how Israel could call on their God at any moment and God come and fight for them. So now they took away all of the Apocrypha. But as you can tell, you need to know what happened during the Grecian Empire to understand some of the Bible, some of the prophecies in the Bible. A lot of people don't know some of Zechariah's prophecy is found in the Grecian Empire, some of it. So, I mean, you got Daniel here. You got Daniel chapter 8 through 12 found in the Maccabees, the Grecian Empire. But if you don't have the Apocrypha, if you don't read this history, then you're stuck. And then you're forced to put everything on the New Testament. You're forced to put everything in Christ's lap. Even though Christ did not say it's about him, you're forced to put it in his lap because you don't really know what it's talking about. And you just can't say, this is just stuff I don't even know what it's talking about. So you force it upon Christ, and Christ enforces it on himself. So that's the error. But I want everybody to understand that at the end, you got to understand that the Bible is full of themes. And I understand that more and more as I read and do more and more research, that the Bible is full of themes. So this is a theme. as Antiochus was being destroyed by the Father, Daniel 12:45, and he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain, and yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. So as Antiochus Epiphanes come to his end, what happens? Daniel 12:1 and 2. And at that time shall Michael stand up. At what time? At the time that Antiochus is coming to his end. You remember that Antiochus was attacked by some type of invisible force. So while Antiochus is coming to his end, at that time, an invisible force, Michael, stands up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time, thou people shall be delivered, every one is found written in the book. So at the time of Antiochus Epiphanes' destruction, and who comes after him, dealing with the Grecians, all the way up into the Romans, at that time, that whole timeline is what's going on in history. At that time, a tribulation should occur. And the resurrection was supposed to happen. And at that time, thy people shall be delivered, everyone that is found written in the book. So all the people that went back to the old covenant, to the Mosaic covenant, doing it correctly, they was delivered. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. So the thought process there is a resurrection of the people was to occur. A resurrection of the dead ones was to occur. Now, I don't think they're talking about bodily resurrection here. I'm thinking they're talking about covenant dead people being brought up. And you had to use them coming out of the dirt, just like Ezekiel did, dealing with the valley of the dry bones when they were dead in their graves and they had to come out of their graves back into the covenant standard. So I'm believing here, Daniel is saying that after Antiochus was destroyed and that tribulation period was getting wrapped up, Israel, who was being made white through those trials, would be resurrected back into their covenant, into the righteousness. This is true resurrection in the old covenant. And I don't think the new covenant resurrection varies. Now, you see a teaching of bodily resurrections occurring during the Grecian period and the Roman period, because the Grecians and the Romans, they was all philosophers. So I don't care who you is, you're going to pick up some part of the culture that you were in. And if it doesn't deflect the Most High's words, why would the Most High have to come in and correct it? Because it doesn't stop what he's saying. Because a resurrection of souls did have to occur. But the teachings of physical body resurrection came from the Grecian era and the Romans era, because that's what they believed in. They believed in all that stuff. That's why the Sadducees and the Pharisees was at each other's head, because they was Hebrew culture against Hellenized culture. You know, it was just, they were bumping heads because of the different philosophies that they had dealing with the Hebrew scriptures. Because we got to remember, in the new covenant, or after the Babylonian captivity, when Cyrus let them return back, and they created the new system, they created the new system of worship, they edited some of the Mosaic covenant. They edited some of the law. They changed around some of the temple, so they started doing a practice that wasn't occurring in the first temple. That's a whole different story for something else. But I was wanting people to see the theme of resurrection is found in the Grecians. So when Christ uses that same theme of resurrection and the Romans, it makes sense. But I also want to bring your attention that we got to the end of the third beast. You see, you don't see nothing about judgment here. You don't see nothing about books. We know that the judgment occurred. And we know that the books were open. And we know that it got us to Antiochus Epiphanes being destroyed. And we know Antiochus Epiphanes had to be destroyed during that third beast. That horn came up during the third beast. So we can't make Antiochus Epiphanes the fourth beast by himself. Now, can we make him be a kingdom like none other that trod down all of the saints and had iron teeth and all that stuff? I mean, you can, because it would fit right there, but would it make eschatological sense? Would it make end time sense? I mean, you can put them there, and I say research the Seleucid Empire, research Antiochus Epiphanes' lineage, and see if there's 10 of them for the 10 horns. Let's see if it's 10 of them. If it is, you can make it fit, because Antiochus did this and that. But I seem to think the overall view of the fourth beast would be more of Rome, because the new covenant did not come under Antiochus Epiphanes. The new covenant did not come under Antiochus Epiphanes. It just didn't happen. Now the new covenant thing happened under Antiochus Epiphanes because they came back to everlasting righteousness. That's a new covenant thing. But the new covenant itself wasn't enforced under Antiochus Epiphanes. Also, the Maccabees were still looking for a prophet. So that lets you know that they knew that they wasn't at the end of the story. And if you go to the first temple services, you realize that the first temple services was pointing toward Christ. The second temple services was pointing toward Moses. Once again, first temple services, Christ. Second temple services, Moses. But different story, different times. We can go through all of that later. So hopefully we see now, just to break down, how Daniel's 70 weeks was actually about the Maccabean era, the Grecians, and we can allude. Now, before I cut it off, now let me show you how we can allude to Daniel's 70 weeks dealing with Christ. Holy Bible to be. So now let me just show you how we can allude to it. I'm going to read Daniel 9:24. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish the transgressions and to make an end of sins. So now let me show you how we can use Daniel 70 weeks and allude to the new covenant, the New Testament, with Daniel 70 weeks without Daniel 70 weeks actually being about the new covenant or the New Testament. So now, to finish the transgression and to make an end of sin. So let's go to Hebrews 9. This is how the Most High works. He links stuff. He has an ideology. He has the story mapped out from the beginning to the ending before he even created mankind. He knew how it was going to start. He knew how it was going to end it. He just put all the characters in play. He didn't just stick. Let's just stick this here and not use it again. The Most High never did that. He used his story throughout stories. So now, transgression to make an end of sin. Hebrews 9:26 and 20 through 28. Hebrews 9:26. For then must he have often. Well, I'm gonna start at 25. Well, 24. For Christ is not entered into the holy places made with hands, which are the figures of the truth, but in heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. Nor yet that he should offer himself often as the high priest enter into the holy place every year with the blood of others. For then must he then must he often have suffered since the foundation of the world. But now in the end of the world hath he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. As it is appointed unto men once to die, but after this the judgment, so Christ was offered once to bear the sins of many. And unto them that look for him shall he appear a second time without sin unto salvation. So now, to make an end of sins, we see Christ made an end of sins through the sacrifice of himself. To make reconciliation for iniquity or atonement. Hold on, but let me read also something dealing with the end of sins. Hebrews 10 and 12. But this man, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down on the right hand of God. So we have the end of sins through Christ right there. So we have the story, Daniel 70 weeks, what's it about, and then we can have the allusion. So now if you want to say Daniel 70 weeks is a shadow and Christ is the fulfillment, you can, but Christ doesn't teach it that way. So, but now we ourselves can see the allusions from it. And to make reconciliation for to make reconciliation or atonement for iniquities. So let's go to Romans 5:18. Therefore, as by the offense of one judgment came unto all men to condemnation, even so by the righteousness of one, the free gift came upon all men unto justification of life. So we have the atonement for iniquity, and we have Christ with his sacrifice making an atonement to bring life. Hold on, maybe I'm doing that wrong. I am doing that wrong. To bring in everlasting righteousness. My bad, y'all. To bring in everlasting righteousness, Romans 5:18. I'm on now. Therefore, by the offense of one judgment came unto all men to condemnation. Even so, by the righteousness of one, the free gift came upon all men unto justification of life. So he brought in everlasting righteousness. That's that everlasting righteousness being brought in so mankind could live. So now, let's go back to reconciliation of iniquity, because that's what I was messing up on. So the reconciliation of iniquity, Hebrews 2:17, dealing with the atonement. Wherefore in all things it behooved him to be made like unto his brethren, that he might be a merciful and faithful high priest in all things pertaining to God, to make reconciliation for the sins of the people, to make reconciliation for iniquity, for the sins, to bring in everlasting righteousness. I read that. To seal up the vision. Let's go to Mark 1. Mark 1. In the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, in the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, as it was written in the prophets, behold, I will send my messenger before thy face, which shall prepare the way before thee. The voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare ye the way of the Lord, make his path straight. John did baptize in the wilderness and preached the baptism of repentance for the remission of sins. And there went out unto him all the land of Judea, and they of Jerusalem, and were all baptized of him in the river of Jordan, confessing their sins. So we have the vision being sealed up. We have John the Baptist coming as the one crying in the wilderness, making a path straight from the Lord, making a path straight for the Lord. So when the Lord came upon the scene through the works of John the Baptist, making a way for him, the vision was being sealed up. And to bring in, and to seal up prophecy. And to seal up prophecy, now you can walk through. Y'all, this is my wife right here. I'm in the living room, so I can't complain.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's all good. To seal up prophecy, Luke 21:22. For these be the days of vengeance. Well, you know, when you start at 20. And when you see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is not. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out. And let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. Seal up prophecy, all things fulfilled. Seal up vision. John came making a way for Christ. After Christ, no more vision was needed. Prophecy, all things fulfilled. And to anoint the most holy, let's go to Luke 4. Let's start at 17, go to 21. And there was delivered unto him the book of the prophet Isaiah. And when he had opened the book, he found the place where it was written, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he had anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He had sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering the sight of the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord. Then he closed the book, and he gave it again to the minister, and sat down. And the eyes of all them that were in the synagogues was fastened on him. And he began to say unto them, this day is this scripture fulfilled in your ears. So, yes, he was anointed to preach. Christ was the true temple. He was the true tabernacle. So he was anointed by the Father. And one more, let's go to Acts 10. Acts 10:38. Let's start at 37. That word start 36. The word which God sent unto the children of Israel, preaching peace by Jesus Christ. He is Lord of all. That word I say, ye know, which was published throughout all Judea. It began from Galilee after the baptism which John preached. How God anointed Jesus of Nazareth with the Holy Ghost and with power, who went about doing good and healing all that were oppressed of the devil, for God was with him. So we have Christ being anointed by the Most High, using the Holy Spirit, and we have Christ being anointed to preach. And then you can go down when the Messiah, the Prince, being cut off. We know that Christ was cut off. He wasn't cut off for himself. He was cut off for the sin of the nation, or the sin of the people. And the people of the Prince came in and to destroy the city and the sanctuary. We know that the princes of Israel were indeed the high priest. And the people of the high priest, which were the Israelites, came in, which was the Zealots and the Sakari. They came in and they destroyed the city and actually the sanctuary. With the civil wars they were having inside of Jerusalem, and the abomination of desolation was set up, which according to Luke was the Roman army. And all of this happened until the end, and the time was consummated, aka all things fulfilled. So you can go through Daniel 70 weeks and get Christ's story out of it. 100%. Daniel 70 weeks was about the Maccabean era, but you can allude the story behind Christ using Daniel 70 weeks, because that's how the Most High operates. He doesn't just leave one specific incredible story and not keep reusing it throughout his works. That's not how he operates. So we can have the correct application, and then we can have the applications that feed off of point blank. So now Hopefully that's it. Indeed, Christ did quote Daniel 12. But let's see what happened. Let's see why Christ quoted Daniel 12:1. Daniel 12:1. As soon as Antiochus was destroyed, as soon as Antiochus was destroyed, who had brought all of that tribulation upon Israel, then the dead was rose up, right? It was a time of tribulation as has never seen before, and then the dead rose up, all dealing with the time that Antiochus was doing his wrath, or was doing whatever he was doing to Israel. So once you go to Matthew 24, when Christ pulled from that, Christ used that same, what happened in the Maccabean era? The temple was destroyed, the people were destroyed. It was no refuge for them until the consummation occurred, until Judas Maccabees picked up the sword and fought off Antiochus. So in Matthew 24, you have the same story. You have the temple being destroyed, you have the people being trodden down, and Christ says this is going to be a great tribulation, since there such as was not since the beginning of the world to the time, nor shall ever will be. And except those days shall be shortened, no flesh shall be saved. So Christ is able to allude from Daniel, because Daniel has already occurred. And the Israelites that he's talking to would have understood why he's pulling from Daniel, because it's the same exact echo of what was going on in the Maccabean era. And I like the word echo. When Daniel was going through it, once again, if we read Daniel, it said that Daniel, this was going to occur during the last days in Daniel also. But in Daniel, in context, it was talking about the last days of those kingdoms he was addressing. Christ is saying this is going to happen at the last days of the kingdom he was addressing, which was also the last days of the covenant. Christ lived when the kingdom and the covenant was leaving. The Maccabean era was when the kingdoms and when the kingdoms was leaving, but the covenant needed to be reestablished. Once again, the kingdom was leaving, but that Mosaic covenant had to be reestablished. In Christ's days, that kingdom was leaving, but the new covenant had to be established. So they have similar stories going around. And if you actually go through the Maccabees and go through the Romans, you realize that their stories are very similar, mainly because they're both descendants of Japhet. The Javan came from Japhet, and Chittim came from Japhet. They're all sons of Japhet. In fact, Chittim was a son of Javan. So the Romans were the sons of the Grecians. So all the things that happened in the Grecian era was similar to that what happened in the Romans era. So they can, they're like echoes of each other. So yes, Christ was able to pull from it and say that it was happening in the last days, because the same thing happened in Daniel, and Daniel said that was happening in the last days also. But it was the last days of what Daniel was bringing compared to what the last days of what Christ was bringing. But now, we got to understand that they specifically talk about, like, when Moses said these things will happen in the latter days, in the Song of Moses. Well, you can go through the Song of Moses, and you can see when this happened in the Grecian Empire, and you can see when this happened in the Roman Empire. You can even see when this happened in the Babylonian Empire. So the things that were supposed to happen in the latter days was the latter days of those specific kingdoms. But the main latter day, which ended the age, that latter day which ended the age, was the point. It was the main latter. It's like all these other last days was just a shadow, a reflection of that main latter day that ended the covenant. And you can go through Josephus. He talked about a few ages. So that last age that was going to end that Mosaic covenant and bring in that everlasting age, That's the main latter days that Christ was concentrating on. That's the latter days that Moses was looking to, but it was still latter days within those kingdoms that had to come to an end. Those kingdoms still had a time of the end. And I think from my research, this is just from my research, I have this belief. This is not a preterist belief. This is an Assembly of Sound Doctrine Elvin's belief. This is Elvin Israel's belief. I'm not saying that this is what Mr. Bell teaches or Mr. Dunn or David. I'm saying from what I have researched and what I have gathered, the last days, those latter days, dealt with kingdoms, but Christ addressed the latter days dealing with the age. And the only way you can tell if anybody else addressed the latter days dealing with the age also, and not a reflection of those kingdoms with the latter days, is reading in context. So, I mean, like Daniel, he literally says that the last days dealing with these kingdoms. So he's talking about the last days of those kingdoms. So when you see last days in Daniel, he's talking about the kingdom. When Christ pulled from Daniel talking about the last days, Christ was talking about the age. So it's just, and Brother Paul, this is all about the context. So that's just what I came up with. Hopefully we can see it, but I'm telling everybody, if you can, man, these apocrypha, they're pretty cheap. Get you an apocrypha. I mean, if you want to know some more Hebraic literature or want to know the mindset that was going on during the third and fourth beast, you need to get you an apocrypha in order to get the whole story. You have the Old Testament, you have the apocrypha, then you have the New Testament. Without this, you have the Old Testament, then you have the New Testament. And you're missing the Grecian era. And the Grecian era is important because there's prophecies about the Babylonians. There's prophecies about the Medo-Persians. There's prophecies about the Grecians, and there's prophecies about the Romans. You can't skip the prophecies about the Grecians, because what you do, you'll skip ahead and start putting the things dealing with Romans and the Romans in Christ, where it's actually talking about the Grecians. So, I tell everybody, let's get you an apocrypha. Let's get you an apocrypha. But that is all I have. Thank y'all for listening in. Anybody want to say anything? I know I went on, man, going on 2 hours. Anybody want? And thank you all for listening. Paul, Mariel, Shannon, Franklin, Prince Mason, Roger, Shannon, Raphael, Mr. Lee, Boss, Master Boss, Mr. Tim, Mr. Paul, Mr. Demetrius, Alvin, Mr. Alvin, Mr. Finkel, Miss Tiffany, Miss Kalela, Miss Kelia, Mr. Douglas. Thank you all for listening in. Anybody got anything they want to say before I cut off? And once again, this is my understanding. This is my understanding. This is I'm not saying this is what Mr. Bell represented. He would have been here tonight to give his view, but he ran into some things on his end that he had to do. So I went on and did it, my part without him, and maybe me and him can reconvene later and actually sit down through it. But hopefully y'all see what I was talking about, and we can quit putting Christ where he doesn't belong, because that's not what he taught. Next, I want to go through, y'all, I'm loving this. Right now I'm researching kingdom theology and temple theology. I'm loving it. Once again, I'm absolutely loving it. It's opening so much information right now. Kingdom theology and temple theology. It's opening the Bible so much. I thought full preterists opened the Bible so much. You combine what you know and with full preterists, with kingdom theology and temple theology, it all makes sense. You will see how everybody in the Bible was alluding to everybody, and how everybody used everybody's understanding in order to bring out what they knew. And you see how the Most High interacted with them, dealing with the literature as well as the things that they passed on by word of mouth. Then you can see the difference between the first covenant, the first temple compared to the second temple. You can see how they looked at the covenant before exile and after exile, and how the new covenant came into play and all of that. It's amazing, and I'm loving it. I'm out here McDonald's, loving it. So that's what I'm diving in right now. So whenever y'all get a chance, just look at it. But I'm asking, hey, everybody, pick you up in a box. Pick you up in a box. Even because these people say it's non-canonical, read it yourself and you determine, because it's a lot of meat in there. These are Israelites created these things, and people are telling you don't listen to the Israelites. So if you want to know more about their culture, listen to it, and then you can see how it applies to the rest of the world. But you got to know how it applies to them before you start putting it on the rest of the world. And there's a lot of things about the Gentiles in here. Let me read y'all one thing, then we can call it quits. You go to 2nd Ezra, right? Let me tell you what 2nd Ezra says. It says, 2nd Ezra 1, and let's start at verse 30. I gathered you, 29, that you will be my people, and I should be your God, that you would be my children, and I should be your father. I gathered you together as a hen gathered her chickens under her wings. Don't remember Christ saying something like that? How often I would have gathered you like a chick? Anyway, but now, what shall I do unto you? I will cast you out from my face. When ye offer unto me, I will turn my face from you. For your solemn feast days, your new moons, and your circumcisions have I forsaken. Paul said, let no man judge you on the new moon, and in the meats and drinks. They're alluding to the same thing. But let's see what's going on, because Paul was trying to bring in how the Gentiles was coming in. Let's see what 2nd Ezra says dealing with this subject. I sent unto you my servants, the prophets, whom you have taken and slain and turned their bodies in pieces, whose blood I will require of your hands, said the Lord. What is said in Revelation about the whore? The blood of the saints was found in her. Now you literally see who they're talking about. It takes out a lot of the guesswork. This is Jerusalem it's talking about. These are the Israelites. I have sent you my servants, the prophets, whom you have taken and slain and torn their body in pieces, whose blood I will require of your hands, said the Lord, atonement. Thus said the Almighty Lord, your house is desolate. I will cast you out as the wind doth stubble. What did Christ tell them? For behold, Pharisees, your house is left unto you desolate. Let's keep reading. And your children shall not be fruitful, for they have despised my commandment, singular, and done the thing that is evil before me. Your houses, he's talking to Israel, your houses will I give to a people that shall come. These are Christians being prophesied by in the book of Ezra. Your house will I give to a people that shall come, which not having heard of me, yet shall believe me. Now, who was the one that had not heard of Christ? Well, according to Isaiah 66, I'm telling y'all, this stuff is powerful. According to Isaiah 66, 19, I will set a sign among them, and I will send those that escape to them unto the nations, to Tarshish. These are the descendants of Japheth, the true Gentiles, to Tarshish, Pool, Lud, that draw the bow, to Tabal and Javan. These are the Grecians, and all of their ancestry. To the isles afar off. They had the isles. that have not heard my fame, neither have seen my glory, and they should declare my glory among the Gentiles. Your house I will give to a people that shall come, which not having heard of me, yet shall believe me, to whom I have showed no signs, yet they shall do that I have commanded them. They have seen no prophets, yet they shall call their sins to remembrance and acknowledge them. This is putting that law on their heart. These are Christians. This is not the Israelites. I take to witness the grace of these are the Israelites who are Christians as well as the Gentile Christians. I take to witness the grace of the people to come, whose little ones rejoice in gladness. And though they have not seen me with bodily eyes, yet in spirit they believe the thing that I say. These people display faith. Without faith, you cannot please the Most High. Second Ezra is talking about new covenant things. Verse 38. And now, brother, behold, what glory, and see the people that cometh from the east, unto whom I would give for leaders Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Oseas, Amos, and Micah, Joel, Abadias, and Jonas, Nahum, Habakkuk, Sophonias, Agaias, Zachary, and Malachi, which is called also the angel of the Lord. So in other words, I will give them the prophets. I will give those people the inheritance and the prophets. That's second Ezra. I mean, get you in the Apocrypha, y'all. It helps expand more of the ideology of what was going on. So, I mean, I don't make this stuff up. I also have a Josephus, which I didn't even get to go into Josephus, dealing with Daniel 70 weeks. If y'all there real fast, then I promise y'all after this one, I cut it off. I cut it off after this one. But according to Josephus, first of all, War of the Jews, Book 1, Chapter 1, Section 1, around verse 32, who fled to Antiochus and besought him to make use of them for his leaders and to make an expedition unto Judea. The king being thereto disposed beforehand, complied with them, and came unto the Jews with a great army, and took their city by force, and slew a great multitude of those that favored Ptolemy, and sent out his soldiers to plunder them without mercy. He also spoiled the temple, and put a stop to the constant practice of offering a daily sacrifice for expiation for 3 years and 6 months. You see who Daniel is talking about. You see who Daniel was talking about. And then the one I was going to pull, and this is what I was looking for earlier. Let's see if I can find it real fast. Dealing with Daniel 70 weeks. I made so many notes and it's hard to get them. Oh, I'm sure. I think I marked it. Let me see. Right, it's 12. That's not the mark. Hold on, y'all. I had it marked yesterday. There's a mark. I want to read this to y'all, and then I swear I'll be done. I hate when this happens. This dead space. All right. The old-fashioned way. Let's just go through it. thought it was close to 19. So much stuff to remember. Okay. I know what I'm looking for now. I need to find what it's dealing with Daniel. Which makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Philistine, like Hebrews, Rome, that would be before that then. The temple, Parthians, Babylon, our temple. Okay. We got Cyrus right there, so it's got to be coming up. Sorry, y'all. I'm almost there now. Oh, we got Solomon right there. 10 tribes. Josephus got so much information, y'all. It's crazy. I done went through the whole book. Man. Man. All right, here we go right here. Antiochus. All right, I didn't find Antiochus. All right, here we go. Golly. The Antiquities of the Jews. Antiquities of the Jews, Book 10, Chapter 11, Section 7. I'm going to start reading at 274. Well, I'm going to start reading at 272. Daniel wrote that he saw these visions in the plain of Susa, and he had informed us that God interpreted the appearance of this vision after the following manner. He said that the realm signified the kingdoms, with an S, of the Medes and the Persians, and the horns, those kings that were reigned in them. And that the last horn signified the last king, and he should exceed all of the kings in riches and glory. That the he-goat signified that one should come and reign from the Greeks, who should twice fight with the Persians and overcome him in battle, and should receive his entire dominion. That by the great horn which sprang out of his forehead of the he-goat was meant the first king, and that the springing up of 4 horns upon its falling off, and the conversions of every one of them to the 4 quarters of the earth signified the successors that should arise after the death of the first king, and the partition of the kingdom among them, that they should be neither his children nor of his kindred, that many should reign over the habitable earth for many years. So now, the earth that they reigned over was what? The habitable earth. What did it say that they went to? The 4 horns went to the 4 quarters, or the 4 corners of the earth. So, see, I love this information right here. See, you got to go into this information in order to understand the Hebrew mindset. So, Josephus was a Hebrew. He was an Israelite. He was of the priest lineage. He was very astute, and he was a historian. And no, he wasn't a traitor, contrary to what anybody say who have not actually studied him. I just studied the whole book, so I have an insight. But anyway, according to the Israelites, the habitable earth, the 4 quarters of the earth, was those territories within the kingdoms that had them captive. For instance, every territory that the Grecians ruled over was the same territories that the Persians ruled over, which was the same territory that the Babylonians ruled over, which was the same territory that the Egyptians ruled over, which was the same territories that the Romans ruled over. So yes, they expanded a little bit, but overall, their world was the Eastern world. Their four corners of the earth was the world that they knew. It was that territory over there in the Eastern world that they knew. They would not be talking about the Western Hemisphere. They would not be talking about our Western world. They was talking about their Eastern world. So when it said Israel was dispersed to the four corners of the world, it's not talking about America. It's talking about the four corners of the Eastern Hemisphere, in which Rome or Babylon or Greek ruled over. That is the four corners, not the whole globe. That world that they knew. They didn't know nothing about no America, United States, none of that. South America, nothing. They knew about the world that they lived in. That's what they did their commerce from. That's all that they knew about. So the four corners would be the world that they knew. So let's don't talk about anything outside of the world that they knew. You can't bring the United States into them. So now, that's one thing. Second thing, they called it the habitable earth. The habitable earth is the earth that they knew was inhabited. They did not know that America was inhabited by the indigenous people. They did not know that the Egyptians actually came over to the Americans, and some of Israel might have slipped over to the Americans beforehand. They did not know about this habitable earth. The habitable earth they knew about is the earth that they saw the buildings in, the earth that they saw the waters, the river fronts, that they saw the irrigation canals and all of that stuff. The habitable world they knew about is the world what they saw had habitation. They did not know about our world, and they didn't know if this world was habited or not. So that's their habitable world. And I can here's a point right here real fast, and I'll finish reading what I was going to do. Because for some reason, I feel that people are just going to want to argue against it. So I'm just going to pull something real fast. The War of the Jews, Book 1, Chapter 32, Section 3, around verse 633. It says, "Yet was I absent, Father, on thy affairs, that Celius might not treat thee with contempt of thine old age. Rome is a witness to my filial affection, and so is Caesar, the ruler of the habitable earth." Page 712, the book of Josephus, War of the Jews. Book 1, chapter 32, section 3, around line 633, page 712. Caesar was the ruler of the habitable earth. So no, Caesar was not ruling the Americas. Caesar was ruling the habitable earth. The earth that they knew was inhabited. That's what Caesar was ruling over. He did not have reign in Australia. He did not have reign over here in the Americas. He did not have reign in Mexico. He did not have none of the reigns over here. Canada, he did not have no reign over here. This was not their habitable earth. So once you read in scriptures, all nations, all the world, all the earth, no, they are talking about in context the world, the earth that they know. Once again, Caesar was ruling over the habitable earth, the earth that they knew. He wasn't ruling over the entire globe, over the entire planet. So, let's keep it in context. But now, back to what I was reading. It shall reign over the habitable earth for many years. Once again, the Grecians didn't reign over everybody. They just reigned over that eastern world. And that from among them there shall arise a certain king that shall overcome our nation and their laws. So this is talking about the Jews now. And should take away our political government. Believe it or not, the Jews had a political government under the law, and should spoil the temple and forbid the sacrifices to be offered for 3 years' time. So at one point, he said 3.5 years. At another point, he said 3 years. It shows you that the Most High was given figures for, I don't want to say ballpark, but that's what it is. Ballpark figures. He wasn't given exact dates and times because he wasn't concentrating on that. He was concentrating on the events. He was concentrating on the time period, the numbers that he gave, not as in exact but ballpark figure. That's why he could tell Abraham, your descendants will be in servitude for 400 years, but once you add it up, it's actually 430 years, because the Most High isn't worried about precise times and dates, especially dealing with free will, but he can give you a ballpark figure. That's how it works. All right, that's how it works. So now, should take away our political government and should spoil the temple and forbid the sacrifices to be offered for 3 years' times. And indeed, it so came to pass that our nation suffered these things under Antiochus Epiphanes, according to Daniel's vision. So the vision that Daniel had dealing with the destruction of the temple and the people and the offerings being spoiled is about Antiochus Epiphanes. But let's keep reading. Let's read about the fourth beast now, and what he wrote many years before they came to pass. In the very same manner. So now we have an extra beast. Daniel talked about the second and third beast. He talked about the second and third. Like I said, if you want to give Antiochus the fourth beast, that's on you. If you find out that the Seleucids had the requirements, that's on you. But Josephus, the high priest, let's see what he said, who knew these prophecies also. In the very same manner, Daniel also wrote concerning the Roman government, and that our country should be made desolate by them. So Daniel wrote that the Roman government was going to make Jerusalem desolate. And you can find this pretty much dealing with the fourth beast. And all these things did this man leave, or you can say that the 70 weeks can allude to the third and the fourth beast, if that's what you want to do. That's on you. All these things did this man leave in writing, as God has showed them to him, insomuch that such as read his prophecies and see how they have been fulfilled would wonder at the honor wherewith God honored Daniel. So, according to Josephus, by the time he wrote this in 90 AD, something like that, the prophecies of Daniel, dealing with the destruction, dealing with all of the beasts, had already been fulfilled. Once again, according to Josephus, who lived back then, thousands of years back then, who lived when Rome destroyed Jerusalem, who heard the stories of how Antiochus Epiphanes destroyed Jerusalem, this priest who knew prophecies said, by the time he wrote this, Daniel's prophecies had been fulfilled. So guess what? There's a resurrection motif in Daniel's prophecy. So if you want to take this as literal bodies coming out of the ground, if that's what you want to take from the resurrection, regardless, Josephus said it had been fulfilled by the time he wrote that. So do you think Josephus was thinking that literal bodies came out of the ground? When he saw resurrection, when he saw the resurrection language, do you think when he read, and at that time of trouble, Michael should blow the horn, and those should rise up, some to everlasting righteousness, some to shame and everlasting contempt? Do you think that he literally thought about dead bodies coming out of the ground? And did he see that? Because he said by this time, those prophecies was fulfilled. That's all I'm saying. So, full preterist wins again. So, I am done now for real. I'm showing y'all Josephus too. Once again, my wife bought me this, the Discipleship Study Bible. I didn't like it in the beginning until I actually went in it and I started researching the things that they were saying. And I was like, man, these guys got a point. So then I started listening and started researching myself and said, oh, okay, I see where I was in error at. And me personally, I'm not scared to admit that I was wrong. I was wrong all those times I was forcing Christ and Daniel's 70 weeks prophecy. I was wrong, and now I understand better, and I would do better, and I would teach better. But until then, I'm going to still bring out, because I know what I'm not wrong about, everything being fulfilled. I can prove it over and over and over again. Even Josephus, the historian, understood that everything in Daniel was fulfilled, which meant that the great judgment had to be fulfilled also. These are all themes that they pull from each other. Well, I think I didn't say it enough, y'all. 2 hours and 41 minutes. Thank you, Brother Martin, for listening in, for what you did. Check it out tomorrow. Oh, man. I done went on and on and on. And I see I don't have anyone objecting me right now. That's remarkable by itself. All things has been fulfilled, though. I'm Elvin Israel from Assembly of Sound Doctrine, AOSD Chandler. AOSD CHANDLER. I'm under the leadership and the guidance of the Holy Spirit and Christ and the Father. And my earthly mentor is Mr. William Bell. He's a pastor at Range Road Church of Christ, as well as the Family of God. William Bell, his YouTube channel is All Things Fulfilled. If you want to get a better insight, more thorough breakdown, if you like lecture, to learn from lecture style information, if you like learning detailed information also, please add him on Facebook or his YouTube channel, or if you like how I do things, how I break things down, and how it's not about the professional look to me, it's about the information, you can go to my channel. I'm gonna liven it up a little bit more, but I'm talking to you all. We brothers and sisters, I don't want to look like that we're going to a cinematic movie. We're all the same, and we learn the same. All right, love you all. Thank you all for listening. Hopefully we got it now, so we understand, and we're all on the same page. And when I say it, we don't have to argue about it. So now, shalom, shalom. Have a fantastic night.